Hello, my name is Shirley Higuchi, and I'm the chair of the Heart Mountain, Wyoming Foundation. Today, I'll be reading the excerpt from my book, Setsuko's Secret, Heart Mountain and the Legacy of the Japanese American Incarceration. This chapter will be discussing feeding Heart Mountain. The completion of the Heart Mountain division of the Shoshone Irrigation Project enabled the prisoners to start growing crops of their own to supplement, and they hoped replace the mediocre food provided by the government. Few populations were better equipped to feed themselves. Before the war, many of the prisoners had farmed land throughout California and the Yakima Valley of Washington, raising crops that often required intense and detailed cultivation. Iakichi Higuchi, my grandfather, had a raspberry farm in San Jose. James Ito, a young Nisei, had an agricultural science degree from the University of California, Berkeley. Eiichi Sakaue, who was 30 when he arrived at Heart Mountain, had run farms in Santa Clara County. Others, such as Roy Matsumura and Kijiro Hoshizaki in Los Angeles, had owned grocery stores that catered to the Japanese American community. In short, the Japanese American community knew good food and how to produce it, often coaxing profitable profits from marginal land. They now had the water to enable them to succeed. The previous fall, James Ito and two other prisoners had tested 250 soil samples from around the camp property to determine the best areas for certain crops. This matching of soil with seeds enabled the farm crew to do more than the local farmers, who often planted crops unsuitable for the area, often believing that not enough water could make anything grow, even in the bad soil. Ito and his team analyzed the average crop yields in Wyoming and matched them with a projected population of 6,000 people at Heart Mountain, about 75% of the population. They also studied the Cody and Powell weather reports to determine the exact length of the growing season. They concluded that Heart Mountain soil lacked nitrogen and, quote, certain organic matter is in the case in most desert areas. Ito's team solved the problem by planting legumes, using manure as fertilizer, and analyzing the soil with lime and pH tests. Prisoners and camp administrators cleared about 1,100 acres of virgin land on which the few cattle in the area had grazed previously. Guided by the prisoners who came from Yakima Valley, which had a growing season similar to Heart Mountains, they built small greenhouses they called hotbeds that were heated by sunlight and decomposing manure produced by local livestock. They planted broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, eggplant, peppers, and tomatoes inside the hotbeds and transplanted them in May to avoid the late frost that killed young plants. They augmented the soil with manure to add extra nitrogen. Whatever their specific methods, they grew 2.1 million pounds of produce from 45 different crops on 638 acres of land in 1943. One of their staples was daikon, the Japanese-style white radish that glows a radioactive yellow when pickled. The next year, the farmers took 108,000 pounds of daikon, turnips, and Napa cabbage for pickling in one of the giant vats, which were 6 feet deep and 8 feet in diameter in one of the warehouses. Often these crops went into the camp's root cellar, which stretched more than 100 yards under the camp and had been built with logs harvested from near Yellowstone National Park, about 55 miles west of the camp. Teams of prisoners had just 7 weeks to cut trees and bring the logs back to the roof of the cellar. More than 900,000 pounds of produce were stored in the root cellar, starting with 516,000 pounds of potatoes of 98 varieties. Toshi Ito's wife told me that the cellar was so huge they could drive a truck through it. Many of the former prisoners proudly looked back at that time at Heart Mountain as a time when they had turned desert lands green. In many ways, the ability to farm the land successfully was therapeutic for the incarcerees because it let them believe that they could have control at least of part of their destiny. Years later, the Heart Mountain, Wyoming Foundation would restore the root cellar with the help of the National Park Service and donations from private foundations and individuals. The garden at the museum is now named after James and Toshi Ito. Heart Mountain farmers learned the extent of the area's weather's unpredictability that September, when an early frost wiped out 25 acres of crops, including eggplant, peppers, and cabbage. For Californians, the frost proved just how short the growing season in northwestern Wyoming could be. While the full extent of the damage is not known, some crops were lost entirely, while the yield of others will be reduced because of immature plants will fail to develop, as reported in the Sentinel. There were many reasons why so few farmers had thrived in the Bighorn Basin, because with the lack of soil and lack of water, and of course the cold snaps that could wipe out a summer's work overnight, annual rainfall often came accompanied by violent thunder, and hailstorms could pound crops into pulp out in the fields. By late October 1943, the need to harvest a crop still in the field was urgent. Camp administrators suspended work on virtually every other project except for the hospital and the mess halls to send workers in the fields. By the end of the day and the end of their work, they had harvested the potatoes, turnips, and daikon that went into the root cellar. Without their help, agricultural chief Glenn Hartman said, it would have been virtually impossible for the regular agricultural workers to complete this harvest. That ends the section on feeding Heart Mountain, and I look forward to speaking with you again next week as we explore the mysteries of Setsuko's secret, Heart Mountain, and the legacy of the Japanese American incarceration. Thank you.